A frontier girl carries a deadly secret map. Until a crow warrior becomes her only hope of survival, Lyra crouched behind a jagged rock, her heart pounding like a drum. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying dust and the faint scent of pine. She clutched the small, folded map tightly against her chest. It wasn't just any map. It was a map that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. If the alien syndicate found it, entire worlds could burn. Her breath came in short gasps. She had been running for days, always staying one step ahead of the trackers that hunted her. Each night, she hid in caves or thick forests, listening to the whispers of the wind, imagining the alien eyes that might be watching. The frontier planet Idara 9 was beautiful but dangerous. Mountains rose sharply like the jagged teeth of some giant beast. Rivers ran cold and fast, and forests stretched for miles, hiding both creatures and threats. Humans had settled here generations ago, but survival was never easy. Lyra was used to hardship. She had grown up alone, learning to track animals, find water, and hide from predators. But this mission was different. The map she carried was a deadly secret, and she was only 14. She glanced around, seeing the jagged canyon walls and the dark forest beyond. The alien trackers could be anywhere. Their suits reflected light in strange ways, and their weapons could fire silently, cutting through anything. Lyra's hands trembled, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic was a trap. She had learned early that humans could survive where technology failed. Humans adapted, thought faster, and used their environment in ways machines could not. That was her advantage, but only if she was clever. Her mind raced. The last village she had passed was quiet now. She remembered the faces of the people who had whispered about a warrior from the nearby tribe. They called him the Crow Warrior, a human who could defeat anyone, who moved through forest and mountains like a shadow, and who never lost. Lyra had never seen him, but if there was anyone who could protect her, it was him. She pushed herself to her feet. Every movement had to be careful, precise. One mistake could mean death. She began to run toward the dense forest, where the trees stood like silent guardians. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and purple streaks. Shadows lengthened. Lyra used them to her advantage, sliding between rocks, ducking under low branches, and keeping her chest pressed against the cold bark when she paused. Suddenly, a sharp whistle split the air. Lyra froze. She knew that sound. The trackers were close. Their sensors were probably scanning for heat, movement, or any faint trace of her scent. She ran again, faster this time, her boots pounding against the forest floor. Leaves whipped against her face. Branches scratched her arms, but she ignored the pain. Every step, every breath, brought her closer to the Crow Warrior, the one person she hoped could save her. Hours passed, darkness fell, and the forest became a maze of shadows. Lyra found a narrow stream and followed it, knowing that the water would hide her scent. She stopped at a small clearing and crouched behind a fallen log, listening. Her heart was still racing, but she could hear nothing except the soft rush of water and the whisper of leaves. For the first time in days, she allowed herself a small breath. Maybe I'll make it, she whispered to herself. But she knew better than to hope too much. The syndicate was relentless, and their technology was unmatched. She had to find the Crow Warrior, and fast. The next morning, Lyra moved carefully through the forest, using the sunlight to guide her. She had a rough idea of where the warrior lived, in the canyons at the edge of the mountains. Few dared to go there because the cliffs were sharp and the paths were narrow, but humans had survived here for generations. Humans were clever, and that was what kept them alive. By midday, Lyra reached a rocky ridge overlooking the canyon. She paused, peering down at the valley below. The air was thin, and the wind howled again, carrying a mix of scents: pine, earth, and smoke from some distant fire. She spotted movement, a figure on a ridge across the canyon, a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a black cloak that fluttered in the wind. His eyes scanned the forest with a sharpness that made Lyra's stomach tighten. Could this be him, the Crow warrior? She watched him for a long moment, studying the way he moved. There was confidence in every step, and yet he was silent, almost invisible against the rocks. Lyra's chest swelled with hope. If he was the Crow warrior, maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. But getting to him wouldn't be easy. The canyon was deep, and the paths were treacherous. One slip and she could fall hundreds of feet. She looked at the map, tracing the route she would take. She had to be smart, careful, and quick. Humans survived not because they were stronger than everyone else, but because they thought faster and used what they had. As she began to descend into the canyon, a sudden roar echoed through the cliffs. Lyra froze. Something large was moving, something faster than any animal she had seen. A drone? She didn't wait to find out. She ran, jumping from rock to rock, her boots barely making a sound. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, but she didn't stop. Humans survived by pushing their limits, and she refused to be caught. Hours later, bruised and exhausted, Lyra finally reached a narrow cave. She crawled inside and sank to the ground, pressing the map to her chest. She had made it further than she expected, but the syndicate would not give up. They never did. Her thoughts turned to the Crow warrior again. He was her only hope. She had to find him before the syndicate did. She whispered his name, Kael. "Ah, I hope you are real." Just as she closed her eyes for a moment, she heard a sound. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Lyra's eyes snapped open. A shadow fell across the cave entrance. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to become invisible. The figure stepped into the cave. A man, tall and muscular, with eyes like black steel. He scanned the cave, and then, slowly, he smiled. "You're brave," he said. "Few dare enter these cliffs alone." Lyra's heart raced. Could this be him? She nodded, too exhausted to speak. I need help," she said, her voice trembling. "They're after me." The syndicate. The man studied her carefully. "I've heard rumors," he said finally. "A girl carrying a map that could destroy worlds. They are powerful and dangerous." Lyra nodded again, feeling both relief and fear. "Please, help me. You are the Crow warrior, aren't you?" The man's eyes softened slightly. "I am Kale. I live alone, away from humans and their troubles." "Why should I help you?" Lyra swallowed hard. "Because if they get the map, no one will be safe. Not here, not on any world." Kale studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "Humans think they are fragile," he said. "But sometimes they surprise even the strongest warriors." He extended a hand. "Come. You cannot stay here. The syndicate will find you soon." Lyra took his hand, feeling a mix of fear and hope. For the first time in days, she felt like she might survive. She glanced down at the map, knowing that the journey ahead would be dangerous. But with Kale, the Crow warrior, by her side, she had a chance. Together they left the cave and stepped into the wind. The frontier stretched before them, wild and untamed. Mountains, forests, and rivers awaited, along with dangers that would test every skill, every instinct. But humans survived. Humans adapted. And Lyra was about to prove that even a young girl could stand against impossible odds if she had the courage and the right allies. As the sun set behind the mountains, Lyra held the map close and whispered to herself, "I will survive. I have to." Cale walked beside her, silent but alert, like a shadow guarding light. The frontier was dangerous, but together they were ready. And somewhere in the distance, hidden in the cliffs and shadows, the alien syndicate watched. They had not yet given up. But for now, Lyra and Cale had a head start. And sometimes, in the frontier, that was enough to survive. The morning sun spilled over the cliffs in gold and orange, lighting the rugged terrain of the frontier. Lyra tightened the straps of her pack and glanced at Cale, the crow warrior, moving silently ahead of her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself like he owned the cliffs, even though humans had no claim over this wild land. His black cloak fluttered in the wind as he navigated the narrow ridges, every step precise and careful. For Lyra, it was both terrifying and reassuring. She had heard the stories about Cale, a man who could move through forests and mountains like a shadow, whose arrows never missed, whose strength was legendary. She had hoped he was real. Now she knew he was, and he was far more intimidating than she imagined. "You must move carefully here," Cale said without turning to look at her. His voice was low, calm and measured, like a predator speaking to prey. "One misstep, and the cliffs will take you." Lyra swallowed hard. She had spent years surviving on the frontier, but the cliffs were different. Every ridge looked sharp enough to cut. Every drop seemed endless. Her stomach tightened, but she nodded. "I understand," she said. They walked in silence for hours. Cale's eyes never stopped scanning the terrain. Lyra realized that he wasn't just strong. He was aware of everything, even things she could not see. Birds took flight before she noticed them. Rocks shifted slightly beneath her boots, and Cale had already adjusted. He was always 2 steps ahead, and she wondered how anyone could live like this. Finally, they reached a narrow canyon path that twisted like a serpent through the mountains. Lyra froze. The path was barely wide enough for one person. One misstep, and she could tumble hundreds of feet to the rocks below. Cale stopped and crouched, resting his hands on the edge of the cliff. He turned to her, his dark eyes sharp. "You came here alone?" Lyra nodded. "I had no choice."
They were following me. I had to find you.
Cale studied her face. There was fear in her eyes, yes, but also determination. She had survived on her own this far. "Few humans can endure what you have," he said. "Most would have fallen or given up long before this point." "I have to survive," Lyra said, her voice small but steady. "If they get the map." She swallowed, unsure if she could finish the thought. Everything could be lost. Cale's expression did not change. "You carry something dangerous, and that danger is not just technology. It is greed, power, and death." He looked out over the canyon, and then back at her. "Why should I help you?" Lyra's stomach clenched. She had expected this. Cale did not trust outsiders easily. She had to prove herself, but she was tired, bruised, and exhausted. She clenched her fists, thinking quickly. "Because I can help myself survive," she said. "Because I've made it this far alone. And because I will fight with you, if you let me." Cale's eyes narrowed. "You think courage is enough?" Lyra took a deep breath. "No, but humans are smart. We use our brains, not just our strength. We adapt, we survive. Kale's gaze sharpened. Adaptation, survival. Humans think they are fragile, but sometimes they surprise even the strongest warriors. Lyra nodded, feeling a small surge of hope. Kale's voice sounded like approval, though his face was still unreadable. Very well, Kale said finally. You will prove yourself. Before Lyra could ask what he meant, Kale leapt forward, landing on a narrow ledge with barely a sound. Follow me, he said, and disappeared down the canyon path. Lyra's heart pounded. She hurried to follow, using every skill she had learned to keep pace. She clutched the map tightly under her cloak, knowing that if she fell or the syndicate found her, it would all be over. Hours passed, and the sun climbed high in the sky. Lyra's muscles ached, her feet were sore, and her hands were scratched from gripping rocks and branches. But Kale did not falter. He moved like a shadow, silent and precise, always aware of every obstacle before it happened. Finally, they reached a narrow cave entrance, hidden behind a thick curtain of vines. Kale paused and looked back at her. Here is where the first test begins, he said. Lyra frowned. Test? Kale nodded. The syndicate will not stop. They are relentless. They will send drones, scouts, anyone they can. You must prove that you can think and act under pressure. If you fail, they will find you, and you will die. Lyra's stomach tightened. She had survived so far, but this sounded worse than anything she had faced. She nodded. I'll do it, she said. Kale's eyes softened slightly. Very well. Then pay attention. He led her inside the cave. The walls were rough, the floor uneven, and the air smelled of earth and moisture. Kale gestured for her to stay close. Watch everything. Listen to everything. The first trap is ahead. Lyra followed, her senses on high alert. They entered a wider chamber, where strange, alien devices lined the walls. Kale crouched and pointed to a small panel near the floor. This is a sensor. If you step on it, it will alert the enemy. You must find a way around it. Lyra examined the panel. Her mind raced. She remembered how humans had adapted to dangerous environments for centuries, using ingenuity over strength. Slowly, she found a narrow ledge along the wall and stepped carefully, holding her breath as she moved past the sensor. Kale watched silently, then nodded. Good. You think like a human. That is what keeps us alive. Encouraged, Lyra pressed on. The cave twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the cliffs. Strange echoes bounced off the walls, and shadows danced in the flickering light of their torches. Every step was dangerous. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the chamber. Lyra froze. Drones, small, fast-moving and deadly, swirled around them. Kale moved first, grabbing a rock and hurling it at one drone. It exploded, sparks flying. He moved like water, dodging, striking, and disabling the drones one by one. Lyra's heart raced. She knew she had to act, too. She spotted a control panel and, using her small size and quick reflexes, knocked several wires free. Sparks flew, and a few drones fell. She realized she was learning from Kale, studying, adapting, surviving. When the last drone fell, Kale looked at her with approval. Not bad, he said. You learn quickly. That is why humans endure. Lyra smiled, exhausted but proud. I'm trying. Kale nodded, then led her to a narrow passage that opened to the outside. The canyon stretched before them, wild and untamed, but they could see movement in the distance. The syndicate's scouts were still searching, But for now, Lyra and Kale were safe. They stopped by a small stream to rest. Lyra drank water, feeling the cool liquid soothe her parched throat. Kale watched silently, scanning the cliffs.
"You are stronger than I expected,"
he said finally. Many humans would have given up by now. I had to keep going, Lyra said. There is too much at stake. Kale's eyes softened slightly.
"Yes, you are human."
Clever, strong, and determined. Perhaps that is why I agreed to help. For the first time, Lyra felt a glimmer of hope. She had Kale, the crow warrior, by her side. Together they might survive the dangers ahead. But the frontier was never kind. The alien syndicate would not give up easily. They had advanced technology, relentless tracking methods, and a single goal: the map. Lyra knew that every step forward would be a battle, and she had to be ready. As the sun dipped below the cliffs, casting long shadows across the canyon, Kale spoke again. "Tomorrow we begin the journey to the weapon. It will be dangerous. You must be ready for anything. Do you understand?" Lyra nodded, feeling both fear and determination. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes." Kyle studied her, then finally smiled, a rare expression that made Lyra's heart skip a beat. "Good. Then rest. Tomorrow we fight for survival, and perhaps for the future of humanity itself." That night, under the stars, Lyra lay by the stream, holding the map close. She thought of the danger ahead and the enemies hunting her. But she also thought of Kael, strong and silent, who had agreed to help her. For the first time in days, she felt hope. Humans survived because they were clever. Humans survived because they adapted. And Lyra, small, young, and brave, was about to prove that even the most dangerous frontier could not break her spirit. The frontier stretched endlessly before Lyra and Kael, a mix of jagged mountains, dense forests, and deep canyons. The sun burned high, but even its heat could not ease the tension that followed them. Every step, every shadow, carried danger. The alien syndicate was relentless, and their drones still hovered far behind, scanning, waiting for the slightest mistake. Lyra adjusted her cloak and clutched the map under her arm. The folds had been pressed, folded, and unfolded so many times that it was beginning to fray at the edges. Each night she hid it under rocks, inside tree hollows, and beneath loose dirt. It was the only thing standing between the universe and a weapon the syndicate could use to destroy entire colonies. Kale moved ahead, his senses sharp. His footsteps were silent on the rocks and soil. He paused now and then, glancing back to ensure Lyra was following. "They are closer than you think," he said. His voice was calm, but Lyra could hear the warning in it. The syndicate does not rest. They adapt as we do. Leah nodded. "I've survived worse," she said, though her voice was tight. "And I will survive this too." Kale gave her a long look. "We will see." Hours passed. The cliffs turned into forest, dense and dark. Light filtered through the canopy in thin streams, casting shadows that seemed alive. Lyra kept her eyes wide, scanning constantly. She noticed how Kale moved, how he predicted every branch, every hole in the ground, as if the forest itself obeyed him. She tried to mimic him, learning each motion. Suddenly a sound rang out, a sharp beep followed by a hum. Lyra froze. Drones. She spotted them now, small, fast, hovering above the treetops, their lenses glinting. They had tracked them. "Move," Kale hissed. He grabbed a branch and swung himself into a higher tree, landing silently. "Use the trees. Use the shadows." Lyra followed, climbing quickly, her hands scraping against bark. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. Humans survived because they adapted, because they used what they had. The forest was her ally now. The drones fired small energy pulses, sizzling harmlessly against the thick canopy. Lyra ducked, rolled, and moved faster. She noticed a small stream nearby and led herself toward it. Water could mask her scent, and the drones relied on heat and energy readings. Kale jumped down first, landing in the stream with a splash that would have terrified anyone else. But he was calm, controlled. "Follow me," he said. "The water hides us, but we cannot stop for long." They ran along the stream, moving quietly, listening for the buzz of drones. Lyra realized how much she had learned in just 2 days. Humans adapted faster than anyone imagined. Machines could track, but humans could hide. Humans could think. Humans could survive. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the forest. Lyra froze, looking up. One of the drones had spotted movement. It hovered, bright red lights scanning the area. Kale acted instantly. He grabbed a fallen tree branch and hurled it high into the air. It hit a rock, sending a small cascade of stones tumbling. The drone's sensors flickered, misreading the distraction. Lyra seized the chance and sprinted forward, but the forest was full of dangers beyond the syndicate. A sudden landslide of loose rocks blocked the stream ahead. Lyra stumbled, falling hard, her knees scraping against stone. Pain shot through her legs, but she forced herself up. Survival meant moving despite the pain. Kale helped her to her feet, nodding approvingly. "Humans endure," he said. "Even when it hurts, they endure." Lyra smiled weakly, her chest heaving. "I'll endure," she said. "I have to." They pressed on, moving deeper into the forest. As night fell, the danger increased. The canopy above blocked most of the moonlight, and strange sounds echoed in the darkness. Calls of animals, the snap of branches, and the constant hum of drones in the distance. Kale stopped suddenly and crouched low. Lyra almost ran into him. "Quiet," he whispered. "They're close." Very close. Lyra pressed herself against a tree, holding her breath. The sound of metal scraping against rock made her stomach twist. A squad of alien soldiers had entered the forest. They were moving carefully, their armor glinting faintly in the moonlight. Lyra counted 5. Kale's eyes narrowed. He pointed to a fallen log across the path. "We will use that. Ready?" Lyra nodded. She could feel her pulse racing. Kale had taught her well, but this was different. These soldiers were trained killers. She clenched her fists, thinking of all the humans who had survived against impossible odds. Humans did not give up. Humans fought. Humans survived. Kale leapt first, rolling behind the log. Lyra followed, rolling quickly after him. Bullets, or energy pulses, hit the log, sending sparks flying. Lyra felt the heat on her skin but stayed low. Kale had chosen the perfect cover. "Stay close," Kale whispered. "We move on, my count." The soldiers were still scanning, unaware of their exact position. Kale's hands moved quickly, tying ropes and creating traps. Lyra watched, absorbing every motion. She realized humans had survived because they could learn from experience, because they could improvise in ways machines and aliens could not. "Now," Kale hissed. They moved silently, slipping between trees, over rocks, and through undergrowth. Lyra's legs ached. Her hands were scratched, but she pushed herself harder. Humans endured. Humans survived. Hours later, they reached a high ridge overlooking the valley. The syndicate's drones and soldiers were still in pursuit, but the terrain slowed them down. Lyra looked out over the cliffs, her chest heaving.
We did it,
she whispered. Cale did not speak. His eyes were on the horizon, alert, always alert. We have bought time, he said, but they will not give up. They never do. Lyra nodded, feeling both exhaustion and determination. The journey was far from over. They still had to reach the location on the map, the hidden alien weapon, and the syndicate would stop at nothing to get it. As the sun rose the next morning, painting the cliffs with pink and gold, Cale and Lyra moved carefully through the valley. The air was crisp and birds flew overhead, indifferent to the danger below. Lyra noticed how Cale observed everything: the wind, the ground, even the small animals. Every detail mattered. Humans survived because they noticed what others missed. They made camp for the day, resting near a small stream. Lyra cleaned her wounds, her hands shaking slightly. Kyle watched her, silent. Pain is temporary, he said finally, but weakness lasts longer. I'll survive, Lyra said. Her voice was firm now, stronger than before. I will endure. Cale nodded. Good. Humans endure. That night, as they sat by the fire, Lyra asked, Kyle, why do you help me? Kyle stared into the flames. Because the syndicate is not just dangerous. They are a threat to everything humans have built. They hunt, destroy, and take what they want. Humans survive because they think, because they adapt, and because they fight. I cannot stand by and watch them destroy everything, especially a human who can fight as you do. Lyra felt a surge of pride. She was small, young, and alone, but she had survived this long. With Cale's guidance, she had become more than she ever imagined. Humans were clever, strong, and resilient. They survived when others thought they could not. The next day, they continued their journey. The terrain grew harsher: steep cliffs, sharp rocks, and dense forests. Every step was dangerous, but Lyra moved with determination. The map had led them here, and she could feel the weight of its secret. The alien weapon was close. They moved in silence, listening for any sound of pursuit. Suddenly, a distant explosion rocked the valley. The syndicate had discovered another path and was trying to cut them off. Lyra's heart raced.
They're faster than we thought, she said. Cale's eyes were cold and sharp.
They are relentless, but so are we. Lyra realized something important. Humans survived not because they were faster or stronger than everyone else, but because they never gave up. Humans adapted, fought, and outsmarted every danger. And she, small and young, was no exception. As the sun set behind the cliffs, Cale and Lyra moved cautiously toward the hidden pass. The syndicate would not rest, but neither would they. Every obstacle, every danger, every shadow was a test, and humans endured. That night, under the stars, Lyra held the map close. She thought of the dangers ahead, the alien soldiers, the drones, and the traps that awaited. But she also thought of Kyle, the crow warrior, who had taught her to survive, to adapt, to endure. Together they were a force no one could easily defeat. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows of the cliffs and forests, the syndicate watched. They had not given up. They would not give up. But for now, Lyra and Cale had gained ground. And in the frontier, ground was everything. Humans survived because they adapted. Humans survived because they fought. And humans Small, clever, and brave, could survive anything.